Hey everybody, in this video, I'm going to break down the 8-step process for buying your very first rental property and everything you need to know in order to do so. My name is Anthony. I work with the Rockstar Real Estate team, and I've purchased several rental properties over the last few years, straight rentals, student rentals, rent-to-owns, and in this video, I'm going to break down the step-by-step process for you to buy your very first rental property. So step number 1 is you want to assess your financial situation. You need to be earning some sort of income to qualify for financing in Canada. So whether you're self-employed or you work as an employee, you need to be able to show your income to get financing. Now, unless you're flush with cash and you can buy a property completely with cash, no financing required, you're going to need to get some sort of mortgage for the property. So you need the income and you need to know what your credit score is. Most lenders in Canada require at least a 680 credit score in order to get approved for favorable financing. So you want to get your credit score to minimum 680, but ideally 700 plus, and then you're in the safe range for getting great financing options. If you don't know what your credit score is, you can use free services like creditkarma.com or Borrowwell to find out what your credit score is for free and monitor it on an ongoing basis to make sure you're maintaining a healthy credit score. Next is your down payment. So if you're buying a rental property, you need a minimum 20% down payment to purchase that property in Canada. Now, if you're going to be living in the property, you have the option to put less than 20% down. The requirement being that you are actually living in that property. So you can put down as little as 5% down, 10% down, 15% down, but you have to live in that property. So you can still buy a multi-unit property, let's say a duplex, where you live in one unit and you rent out the other unit in that property, helping offset some of the costs of owning that home. That's commonly referred to as house hacking, where you have rental income offsetting the cost of you living in that property. So that's a fantastic way to start your real estate portfolio, is by living in one unit, renting out another, or a couple units if it's a triplex or quadplex, where you can offset your living costs while becoming a landlord for the first time, understanding property management, screening tenants. It's a fantastic way to get started. Then you can always move out into another property in the future and then rent out the unit that you were living in and repeat the process. However, if you're just going to buy a straight up rental property, you need to save up at least 20%. So if you have a $500,000 property, you're going to need $100,000 to put down as a down payment. Now, next are closing costs. So you can roughly budget about 2% of the purchase price for the closing costs of that home. So for the $500,000 property, you're going to need to budget for about $10,000 to close on that property. Then you might have some expenses right off the bat for that home. If you're going to be doing any sort of renovation or fixing a few things up, you're going to want to budget for that. Or you might just want to be able to build up a buffer in that bank account for that property. So you want to set aside enough money to carry the property for a few months or pay for some maintenance that comes up. So you want to look at having some extra money after closing on the property to provide a buffer. Step number 2 is you want to get pre-approved for financing. The reason you want to get pre-approved for financing before you go out shopping for a property is so that you know your exact budget, what type of home you can buy, where you can buy it, how much you can afford, and that's going to determine the strategy you can implement and where you're buying. So you want to know that ahead of time. The best recommendation is to work with a mortgage broker, especially one that specializes in working with real estate investors, because they're going to get you the best financing terms for a rental property and for your long-term plans. So if you plan on building up a portfolio of rental properties, they're going to help structure your very first financing loan in the way that allows you to get the most loans possible to continue growing your portfolio. And you want to get that set up the right way right from the get-go. So you want to work with a mortgage broker, and they also have access to a ton of different lenders. They don't just work with one bank. Like if you go to TD Bank and you want to get financing through there, because you bank with TD, you're only going to get TD Bank financing options. But when you work with a mortgage broker, you're going to be able to get different financing options from the big 5 or 6 Canadian banks, but also all types of different lenders, so you can really shop around for the best financing for your specific situation. Now in Canada, we like to break mortgages down by A lenders. That's like your big 6 banks, National Bank, TD Bank, Scotiabank. Those are going to be your most favorable lending terms, is with an A lender. Now you need to be able to qualify for an A lender. So oftentimes employees don't have an issue because banks really like employees with a T4 income. But if you're self-employed, that might be tougher because you're writing off a bunch of expenses to bring down your taxable income. And A lenders look at your after-tax income. in order to qualify you for the home. However, B lenders, which can be like credit unions and other types of smaller lenders, they'll actually look at your before tax income. So for self-employed people, B lenders can be a great option. You're going to pay a bit more in interest on those B lender financing loans. However, you can kind of offset the higher interest you're paying because you're writing off expenses for your taxes. So just know that a good mortgage broker that works with investors is going to have options for self-employed and employed people to get you the best option. Then you can always use private money lenders or hard money lenders. Now, this can be more dangerous territory because you're going to pay much higher interest costs on a private money loan, and it's going to be less favorable terms than a B lender or an A lender. So typically these are most used by like house flippers or real estate investors who only need to own a property for a short period of time. Think 6 months to maybe a year so they can get in, renovate the property, flip it, sell it before they have to carry that property at those higher interest rates. So it is an option. However, it's something you want to be very careful with and probably something you want to avoid for your very first rental property. You want to stick with an A lender if you can or a B lender. Step number 3 is you want to research the real estate market. So now that you know what your budget is and what type of home you can afford in what city, that's going to allow you to now determine where you can actually buy your rental property and what type of home you can buy. There's a couple things to consider. Are you looking more so for appreciation of your property, or are you looking more so for cash flow? Because the further you go out to more remote communities, smaller towns, more distant locations from main city and population cores, you're going to be able to generate more cash flow. However, those homes typically appreciate a lot less. Now, in those bigger city centers and population centers like Toronto, like a bigger city like Hamilton, you're going to get more appreciation, but it's going to be much tougher to find cash flow on that property. Also, you need to determine your comfort level. Do you want to buy your very first rental property halfway across the country somewhere in a location that you really don't know much about, where you're distanced from your rental property, you can't see what's going on day to day with it, you don't really know what's happening with the population there or the market or different trends happening within that community? You're going to really be distanced from that first investment and not have that information advantage. However, when you invest in your own backyard, you're going to know what's going on with tenants, with gentrification, with population growth, with job growth, with different trends in that community. And it's going to be kind of a safer bet because you have that info advantage. So that's something you want to determine is what's your comfort level when investing from a distance from your home, especially for your very first rental property. In our house hacking example, where you live in one unit and rent out the other, that's a great way to stay connected to your property because you know exactly what your tenant's up to day to day, and it's very easy to manage the property because you live in it. So that's a great way to get started. Next, you want to analyze market trends. What's happening in that market? Is there population growth? Is there job growth? Is there gentrification happening? If you're doing a vacation rental, are there people continuously coming there to take vacations? If you're doing a student rental, is the student population growing and is there still demand? Is there a lack of inventory in your area for the specific strategy that you'd like to do? Is there a surplus of inventory and it's taking a lot longer to find tenants? These are things that you want to know ahead of time going into your investment. Step number 4 is finding the right rental property. So what type of home do you want to purchase and why? A condo, a single family home, a multi-unit property, a duplex, triplex, quadplex, a 5-unit or more building, which we refer to as a multi-unit. And then within those different property types, what type of strategy do you want to implement? Do you want to do a short-term rental like an Airbnb, a mid-term rental, a long-term rental, a student rental, a rent-to-own? These are all different little niches and strategies within these property types that you can select, and all of these properties and strategies have their pros and cons. Key factors to consider when looking for any type of property is its location. Is it going to be attractive for the type of end unit tenant that you're actually trying to attract for your chosen strategy? A good general rule of thumb is that good homes in good areas attract good tenants, and it works vice versa. Bad homes in bad areas typically attract what? You guessed it, bad tenants. Also, what's the condition of the property? Is it a complete turnkey investment ready to go, meaning you just buy the house, put the key in the lock, turn it, and you're ready to rent it out? Or is it more of a fixer-upper? You have to determine how much time and energy can you allocate. Are you going to be doing the work? Are you going to hire someone for the work? Do you have money to hire someone for the work? You need to know this stuff. And then what is the rental potential of that property for whatever strategy you're doing? How much income can you actually generate from that home? So if you don't have an information advantage for a specific market to invest in, here's where working with a real estate agent that specializes in working with investors can be a game changer, because they're going to have that info advantage. They're going to know what type of rents you can generate from that property, what the demand is going to be like, what type of home is going to generate the most amount of money, whether in terms of cash flow or in terms of long-term appreciation, how to protect your resale value. So if you ever want to exit that investment in the future, how can you do so as effectively and easily as possible for the most amount of money, right? Certain homes are going to allow you to exit that property much better. So working with the real estate agent that specializes in working with investors that really knows a market inside and out can be a game changer, because they can help you avoid so many mistakes from buying the wrong property. Once you buy that property, you can't change the location. You can change the property, but not the location, right? So you really want to know this stuff going into it. That's actually what we help people do here at Rockstar Real Estate. We're a real estate investment focused brokerage that operates out of Oakville, Ontario. We've worked with thousands of different real estate investors over the last 15 years to help them do this exact thing that we're talking about in this video, buying your first rental property or buying your 10th rental property. This is what we help people with. When analyzing deal, you want to be able to crunch the numbers ahead of time before making an offer. You want to know how much income is going to be coming in on that property and how much expenses are going to be going out. Now, on a month-to-month basis, you ideally want positive cash flow, meaning you have more income being generated than the expenses going out. That way you have a stream of income coming from that property to pay you over time, as well as pay for any ongoing maintenance to that property and any vacancies that you might have throughout the length of that investment. At a minimum, you want to aim to at least break even on that property so that the property is paying for itself over time. Some investors will choose to have a negative cash flowing property because they believe in the long-term appreciation of rents to eventually cash flow on that investment, or the long-term appreciation of that property. However, you're now putting yourself in a situation where you have to fund the property with your own income every single month. So you have to determine whether a negative cash flowing property makes sense for you. But in a perfect world, you're going to be cash flowing on that property and it's going to be paying you every single month. The ongoing expenses for a property is going to be the cost of the mortgage month to month, the property insurance, the property tax, any ongoing maintenance costs to upkeep the property. If you're going to hire a property manager to manage the property for you, that's an ongoing cost, as well as any vacancies that you might get through the length of the investment. So that's 6 ongoing expenses that you need to know going into that property. Your income on the investment is going to be the rental income. So whether that's from somebody living in the unit, or maybe you're even renting out part of the property like a garage to a local landscaper or something, and you can generate some rental income there as well. So you want to add up the total amount of rental income from people or whatever on that property, and that's going to be your month-to-month income. So step number 5, you've determined that you found the right property for the right strategy for your lifestyle that you're trying to achieve. Amazing. Now you're going to be making an offer. Here's where it's important to remember that this is an investment and based on numbers and not emotion. This isn't a property that you're going to be living in yourself, or maybe it is if you're house hacking, in which case emotion and lifestyle might play a bigger role. However, if it's a pure investment property, you need to look at one thing, and that's the numbers. You don't want to get emotionally invested and overbid for the property to the point where the numbers don't make sense as an investment anymore. Don't worry if you're going to lose out on the offer because someone outbids you. There's going to be other properties down the line that you can invest in, so you have to be patient and not overbid on that property. Next, you need to know the state of the market. So are homes going for over asking? Is there multiple bidding? Is the seller priced fairly? Can you throw a lowball offer in? Can you go under asking? So here's where your real estate agent is going to come in, because they're going to be able to know all that stuff and determine the best price for you to go in and make an offer at. Now, offers either have conditions or no condition. And a condition is something that you put in the contract that must be fulfilled in order for you to go ahead and actually go through with that offer. So in Canada, it's typical to do like a 5-day conditional period where you can get approval for financing, hard set, so you know 100% you're going to be approved. Or you can do a home inspection where you have the home inspector go in, inspect the property, and make sure there's no major red flags that would cause you to not want that investment property. If you're going to put those conditions in your offer, which ideally you can, because it gives you more flexibility and options to back out if you choose to, just know that your offer is less favorable to the seller, whereas an offer with no conditions is more favorable because it's hard set in stone, the offer's in, and the seller has an offer on the table with no conditions and no chance of somebody backing out. So step number 6 is the conditional period. So if you made an offer that have conditions in it, typically being a home inspection and financing, this is where you're gonna have like 3 or 5 or 7 days, depending on what you offered, to do your due diligence on the property. So you're gonna make sure that you're gonna get your financing hard approved and a commitment from a lender. You've already been pre-approved, but that might've been a few weeks ago or a month or so ago. So now you wanna make sure you get 100% approval from whatever lender you're going with, that they will approve financing for this deal. So you're gonna work with your mortgage broker to get that approved. You're also gonna book a home inspector to go and inspect the property. So they're gonna look for any major red flags that you might not want to deal with if you purchase that home, and you're gonna have the option to back out of that deal if you don't like what you see in that home inspection report. And if you're buying a multi-unit or commercial building, you might have some extra due diligence steps, such as determining the past rental history of that property, doing an environmental assessment. Kind of more goes into these bigger deals where you're looking at 5 units or more, like a small apartment building, because there's more at stake and more due diligence needed. Step number 7 is closing on the property. So you got an accepted offer, you're happy with the conditions, now you're actually gonna close on the home. So you would have set a closing date when you first made the offer on the property. Typical closing dates would be like 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days out. It's whatever you negotiated when you made that offer. So leading up to closing, you're gonna wanna prepare your down payment and closing costs to then be transferred on the day of closing to the bank, seller, what have you. So your real estate lawyer is going to help with that. So here's where you want to prepare for those closing costs, about 2% of the purchase price of the home. So for a $500,000 property, that's about $10,000 for closing costs. That's going to consist of land transfer tax and fees you pay to your lawyer to do a title search and prepare the property to be transferred over. You're also going to be working with your mortgage broker and or lender in order to finalize your financing, sign all the paperwork for the mortgage. So you're going to be doing that leading up to the closing date as well. Once you sign that paperwork, the funds have been transferred over between banks and the seller's been paid and your money's been deposited. All that's going to be settled with the help of your real estate lawyer and mortgage broker or lender. Then you're actually going to close on the property officially, and you're going to be able to pick up the key. So sometimes you pick it up from your lawyer's office, sometimes you pick it up from a real estate brokerage, sometimes it's in a lockbox at the house. Regardless, you're going to get your key and you're going to own your very first rental property. Now, step number 8, we're almost there. You bought the property, congratulations. Now the work just begins, right? So now you have to execute whatever strategy it is you chose for the property. So if you're going to do a renovation, you're going to be now renovating the property. Typically, you want to have a contractor lined up before closing on the property so that they can get in there and start working on the house as soon as you close to minimize any downtime. And you can even negotiate visits to the property before closing in your initial offer. And that's a great time to bring a contractor with you to the property to quote out some of that work so that you can have everything lined up for that first week after closing to get the contractor in there to do any renovation that you might be doing. Then alternatively, either after the renovation or during the renovation, or if there is no renovation, you're going to be renting the property out. So whatever strategy it is, short-term, mid-term, long-term rental, you're going to be putting the steps in a place to execute your chosen rental strategy. So you're going to be getting high quality professional pictures of the home that you can use to advertise it. You're going to be screening tenants, advertising the home, doing everything you need to do to get it rented out. Now you might decide to use a property manager for your property. If so, they're going to be able to do the tenant placement for you, or, advertise it on Airbnb if you're going that route to find people to come stay at your property. But if you're not going to hire the property manager, all that work is up to you. And finally, the best part of all of this is you're going to start collecting rent. So the income is finally coming in. That's going to help you cover those month-to-month expenses that you so carefully laid out when you crunched your numbers. And you are finally going to be a rental property owner, earning equity over time, getting your mortgage paid down by your tenants or, short-term renters, whoever it is renting your property. They're going to be helping pay your mortgage down over time. Hopefully the home will appreciate over time in value. And ideally, you're going to be earning that positive monthly cash flow every single month. Plus, there's also the tax advantages of owning that real estate. So lots of benefits to owning real estate, but this is the 8-step process for how to buy your very first rental property. If you're interested in learning more about how to buy a rental property and doing the market research and getting pre-approved and getting access to a whole Rolodex of professionals that can help you buy your very first rental property, check out our website, rockstarinnercircle.com. This is where you'll see a ton of resources that we've kind of developed and share, free books, reports, case studies, videos on how to invest in real estate profitably. These are things we've learned over the past almost 2 decades now, helping real estate investors build up portfolios so that you can live your life on your own terms. So go to rockstarinnercircle.com. Link is in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck purchasing your first rental property. Finding that real estate agent that specializes in that area, working with investors, is going to